I'm about to walk you through the story of one of the most incredible scientific achievements you can imagine. This is a story about a breakthrough in fusion energy, something paid for by you, the public, that literally promised to change the world. But it's also the story of how that promise was taken, how it was concealed, and ultimately how it was weaponized years before anyone even knew what they were looking at. All right, let's get right into it. Here's how we're going to unpack this whole thing. We're going to start with the amazing science that happened at Los Alamos. Then we'll get into the impossible mission one man was tasked with. After that, we dive into the shadow program. And this is where it gets really disturbing. Finally, we'll see the breakthrough and the final tragic handover. You know, to really get this story, you have to start at its spiritual home, Los Alamos National Laboratory. Out there in the New Mexico desert, for decades, this was the absolute epicenter of a revolutionary technology. This is where the foundations of practical fusion energy were hammered into reality.
And look, this wasn't some lucky accident. This was a systematic conquest of physics. We're talking about the brilliant, painstaking work of pioneers like M. and R.K. Linford, who just built this thing step by step. With the FRX experiments, they showed, hey, this plasma is way more stable than we thought. Then they figured out how to make it last longer. And then, and this is the absolute key, they proved you could move it. They showed this ball of plasma was a tough, self-contained object you could actually transport.
So what exactly is this thing? It's called a field reverse configuration, or an FRC. The easiest way to think about it is like a self-contained, stable little ball of plasma, basically a miniature sun you can hold in a magnetic bottle. And what makes it so special is its structure. It exists at what physicists call high plasma beta, which really just means it's super, super efficient. All the pressure is coming from the plasma itself, not the magnetic field containing it. And that, right there, made it the absolute perfect thing to try and squeeze to achieve fusion. But by the early 2000s, the entire program had just hit a brick wall, a huge one. And to smash through it, they needed to bring in a brilliant mind for a mission that honestly was pushing the very limits of known science. And that's where the hero of our story comes in, Dr. Thomas P. Intrator. So around 2001, Dr. Intrator gets the call. He's now leading the magnetized target fusion program, and the mission is just audacious. His team has to build this plasma injector, the FRXL, to create a perfect little plasma sun. Then they're supposed to fire that plasma into a chamber where a team from the Air Force Research Lab is waiting to just crush it with an imploding can of solid metal, a can that's being squeezed by one of the most powerful machines on the planet. Now, for any of this to work, the plasma had to survive for at least 20 microseconds. That was it, the magic number. The tiny, tiny window of time it needed to stay alive to meet that incoming metal wall. Just 20 millionths of a second. That's all that stood between total failure and a fusion breakthrough that would change history. But here's the brutal reality of what was happening. They were failing. Badly. The plasma was dying. It was sputtering out in less than half the time they needed. We're talking 7 to 11 microseconds. It was a disaster. They weren't even close. The entire multi-million-dollar, multi-lab effort was completely stalled out. So you have to ask, right? The physics just seemed impossible. The core component of this grand, incredible experiment was failing catastrophically. The program everyone could see was on the brink of total collapse. Was that it? After all that work, after all that money, was the dream of compact fusion energy just dead? No, it wasn't dead. In fact, it was more alive than anyone could have possibly imagined. Because that public-facing failure, well, it was a lie, a cover story. The real work, the successful work, was already being moved into the shadows. And what I'm about to show you is the irrefutable proof that this program was being secretly weaponized years before anyone knew. Okay, so here's the crucial point. Think of the public Lonel program as the white world R&D. It was the essential, unclassified work needed to solve the physics problems before the whole thing was taken into the black world. And how did it get there? You follow the people. The key human vector was a man named Gabriel Ivan Font. You can literally trace his career path from Lonel's plasma programs straight into the Skunk Works compact fusion reactor program. This tells you a secret breakthrough had to have happened sometime around 2004 or 2005.
And how can we be so sure? Follow the money. In December 2006, a company called Freescale Semiconductor was bought out for a staggering $17.6 billion. Now, this was no normal business deal. It was a massive corporate action, put together by firms with deep defense connections to capture one single thing: the irreplaceable 20-person team that designed the control systems. You don't spend $17 billion on a failing science project. You do it to lock down a priceless asset after you've had a monumental, secret success. Let that sink in. This proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that the timeline of this cover-up started way earlier than anyone thought. By 2006, this technology was already an active, secured, clandestine asset, completely locked away from you and me. But here's the most incredible part of this whole story. While the shadow program was being secured, while the corporate moves were happening, back in the open, Dr. Intrator and his brilliant team were about to do the impossible. They were about to solve the very problem that was supposedly killing the entire program. These are the names you need to remember. These were the heroes working in Lonell's P24 group. Mentored and led by the visionary Dr. Intrator himself, this team was about to make the critical breakthrough that everything else depended on. They figured it out. See, the old way of making the FRC was just clumsy. It was inefficient. The powerful magnetic fields it used were actually choking off the very thing it needed to create the plasma. So what was the solution? It was absolutely groundbreaking. They used an array of little plasma guns to inject a seed plasma right before the main event. It's like trying to start a campfire with damp wood and then someone brings a blowtorch. This brilliant idea completely changed the game. And here is the result. Just look at that. A stunning 350% increase in what's called trapped magnetic flux. Now, trapped flux is basically the magnetic skeleton that holds the plasma together. The more you have, the stronger and longer lasting your plasma is. So this wasn't just a small improvement, this was a complete revolution. It was the answer. And it was Intrator's mentorship that had trained the very scientist, Toru Weber, who perfected the program's most critical enabling technology. And this brings us to the final and, frankly, the most tragic chapter of this story. Because just as this incredible public breakthrough was being documented, the final handover was taking place, and the life's work of a scientific genius was being fully and completely weaponized. The timing here it's undeniable, and it's absolutely chilling. March 8th, 2014, Operation MH370 happens. Just 1 month later, Skunkworks files the first patents for their reactor. Then, on June 3rd, just 3 months after the event, Dr. Thomas Intrator dies. His death serves as a symbolic marker, happening at the exact moment his public research was ending and the full-scale clandestine industrial program was being rolled out for all to see. They even documented the official handover right there in the scientific literature. This paper, written by his protege Toru Weber, formally transfers Intrator's mentorship role over to Dr. Scott Su. But it was just a formality. The real prize, the validated, de-risked physics that Intrator's team had perfected, had already been completely handed over. This was science paid for by us, developed over decades by some of the most brilliant people in our national labs, all for the promise of clean, limitless energy. And it was taken, all of it. The public funding, the research, the final world-changing breakthrough, it wasn't used for clean energy, no. The validated plasma physics from Intrator's team became the core enabling technology for a deep black program, the very program that was used during Operation MH370, the technology seen in the MH370 orb video. The most valuable science of a generation was stolen, classified, and weaponized. You know, when you really think about it, this is a monumental scientific heist carried out over decades, right under our noses. And it leaves you with one single, deeply disturbing question. If they could take this, something this massive, right out in the open, what else was taken from us in plain sight?